Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Territories Talk. I am your co host, Shaina Smith Archer, saying good evening and hello from the beautiful Virgin Islands. With me this evening, I have a very special guest. We are doing our Overseas Territories Roundtable, and tonight we have persons from our sister territory, the Turks and Caicos Islands. Our co-hosts are hopefully going to be joining us in a little bit this evening. Chris and Shirley possibly will be with us. But before we get started, I just want to say a thank you, as always, to our media partners. Thank you to Cayman Marl Road Facebook page, Radio TCI, Montserrat ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands, CBN Radio FM 90.9, Radio Saba PJFE 93.9 FM, and Barbados's CBC Channel 8. Did I say Radio TCI? Let me make sure I put Radio TCI in. They would be very upset with me. So with us this evening, we have the Honorable E.J. Saunders. He is the Deputy Premier and Minister of Investment, Finance and Trade in TCI. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you? Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Well, thank you for accepting our invitation. And we are running a bit late. We were just talking before the show about the fact that the region isn't on one time zone. So we do apologize for those that may have been tuned in earlier and was wondering what happened to us this evening. So we had a glitch in the time zone. But we are on at 7:30 at TCI time, actually. So we're still on time. All right, so Honorable, let's start with speaking about your portfolio. Give us an overview of what's been happening in the Turks and Caicos and share some highlights with our audiences.
Okay, well, thank you. I hope you can still hear me because where I'm at, the internet is a bit the internet is going in and out. But I will try to. If I have to repeat anything, I'm more than happy to do so. But I'm the Deputy Premier. My name is E.J. Saunders, and my main portfolio, my ministry is the Ministry of Finance, Investment and Trade. I put finance obviously first to point out the importance of it. So the most important part of my ministry is the finance portion, and then comes investment and then trade. Those are the three main areas, and none of other areas fall under my ministry, including the stats department. Mm-hmm. And then we have Invest Turks and Caicos Islands, Invest TCI, which also falls under my ministry, and a few other smaller departments. We've done very well. Some of the highlights I'd like to talk about, particularly during our time in government and my time as Minister of Finance, is that when we came into government, we came in February, the end of February 2021. We were all sworn in very early March, but the country's revenues at that point in time, so during COVID, was below 300 million. It was in the 290 something range. But the country's historic high, which was fiscal year 18-19, was around about 308, if I remember correctly. If it was slightly higher, it would probably be around about 313, but somewhere between 308 and 313. When I was campaigning, I said that we would get, if we were given a first term, we would get the revenues to 400 million. And if we were given a second term, which would be starting early next year, we would get it during the second term to 500 million. And it was I was very ambitious to think that we could come in and bring the country's revenues from 300 million to 400 million with no new taxes. So a lot of people thought it was bravado. When I came in, certainly my PS thought that I probably must have been pushing it a bit, because normally countries would give you incremental growth, somewhere in the single digits year-on-year growth. but to talk about adding 100 million new revenue with no new taxes in 4 years would have been very ambitious. But my first year as Minister of Finance, we went from, we had budgeted that year because we came in again in March. So we came in just before the budget, and we had budgeted 313 million, but we delivered in my first year 396 million. So we went all the way up close to the 400 million mark. Today, last year, we budgeted 420 million. We are in the middle of budgeting right now. I don't see any reason why we will be budgeting less than that. And so we are finishing our term comfortably above the goal that I had set. And I think we will certainly do 500 million. All of this is with no new taxes. So I think we will do the 500 million in next term. And that's managed growth, because if we had tried to push faster than that, we would have ended up burning up the economy, because we'd be growing the economy faster than we could put in the infrastructure and social services to support it. So you don't want to just get as growth as fast as possible. You want managed growth and balanced growth, so you can deliver all of the things that you need, the services and the infrastructure that you need to manage the growth well. I think we're doing a very good job at that. The other highlight was that when we came in, our MSME grant program was in spent its entire budget. We were doing less than 100 grants per year, and they never hit their budget. And I focused quite a bit on it. We revamped the guidelines around the giving of grants to small businesses. Last year, meaning at the end of the last financial year, that was March 2023, that was the first time they hit their budget and spent their entire allocation, but they spent it literally like the last week before the end of the financial year. This year, they had spent their entire budget by November of last year, which meant that before the end of the first half, they'd spent their entire budget, and we have to allocate more funding for them, which is a good thing, which means that they're giving out more grants, and we're giving out higher amounts, and we're giving out more grants. So those two things, and one more thing, we when I was campaigning, I said that we would, if we hit the 400 million, we would treat our civil service well, because I believe that government, I talked about it during the campaign, that government as a service is what we should be speaking to. Our customer service to the public should be top notch. I didn't think that we were there, but part of the reasons that in order to improve the civil service, we need to start with civil service pay. And our civil service pay lagged the private sector. So once we knew that we were comfortably above the 400 million mark, we were budgeting higher than 400 million. We gave the civil service an average salary increase last December. So it took effect this 2 months ago. We gave the civil service average salary increase in the mid-20s, in the mid-20%. And the lowest increase was, I think, 10%, and the highest was over 50%. But the average out was in the mid-20%. So we increased the entire civil service in November. And now the civil service is the employer of choice, because people in the civil service are making now more than the private sector. But we expect the private sector to catch up, and then it'll be an increase right across the country. So those are the three things.
Great. And you touched on quite a few things. So my background is actually, I worked in the Ministry of Finance when I returned from college in 2003. So you piqued my interest when you talked about growing revenue without increasing fees and taxes, because that tends to be what we see governments do as, I guess, a first response to have increased revenue. But you seem to have had more focus on intentionally growing the economy. So what are the main sectors of the economy as it stands right now?
Most of our revenue comes from 3 sources. One of them is the import duties, which always does very well, and it doesn't fluctuate wildly, so it's very predictable where we're going to get. I mean, of course, it has its highs and lows, but it doesn't go there. So we have the import duties. We have the hotel and restaurant and tourism tax. So that's basically a bad tax and a restaurant tax. So those are the two things that drive it, and stamp duty. Now, stamp duty goes with property sales, so it can go up and down. That can swing wildly depending on the inventory that you have available. We're a condo market, and we're now becoming more of a villa market, very, very high in villas. And so if a condo, that hotel project comes on stream and starts to make the inventory available for sales, the bulk of it, your stamp duty can go up quite a bit. And if there's hardly any inventory in the market, then of course it drops. But those are the three main pillars: the import duties, the hotel, restaurant, and tourism tax, and the stamp duty. And we try to be more deliberate about how we manage those. I like to say in Parliament that a lot of times these things don't happen by luck; they happen by design. We're starting to understand the levers much better, and so we know how to pull on each lever. Like I said, there's some things like stamp duties you can't really control it that much. It comes down to the inventory you have in the market. But as we get better at this, and we know with projects we have in the pipeline, we can know how aggressive to get those projects out, or whether we should slow down because we don't want too much of it coming into the market all in one time. So we're getting better at that. It's becoming right now, it's a little bit of more art than science when it comes to the stamp duty, and as well as the HRTT, because that depends on the amount of tourists that you have coming into the country. But Turks and Caicos is a hot brand right now, and so we're benefiting from the fact that we have far, far higher demand than we expect in terms of tourism coming into the country. And that's the reason why it necessitates us having to upgrade our airport. And we are undertaking 400 million rebuild of our major airport.
Okay. And that's going to be expansion of all the facilities, or just specific aspects of it?
Well, I mean, by the time it's done, the current airport won't be there. So it will, but the way it's been constructed, it will feel as if you're expanding it because you're building around it. But by the time it's all done, the current airport terminal will not be there.
Okay, great. And I was also very interested, in my background, I am at the Chamber of Commerce here in the BVI. And I noticed that that's also part of your CV, that you are president of the Chamber of Commerce and TCI. So the small business development grants, that is something that we are lobbying for here and that we love to see. So we'd like to hear more about, what initiated that program and how has it been working? Because based on what you said before in terms of having to reallocate more money to it after an initial allocation process, that it's been very well received.
I'm not going to take credit for it starting the MSME program. I don't even know if there is any government that actually started it. I think it might have come out from something, might have been maybe the United Nations or the World Bank. One of them had these COSME programs going around from Europe, and it eventually made it in the form of the MSME grants program. And I think a number of territories in the region adopted it. I'm certainly not the government, and that started in the Turks and Caicos Islands. We inherited it, but it started, I think, if you look back at it, it started very small, and I think they were a bit tentative. It certainly was not pro-growth. We started out as a $10,000 micro grant. That's $10,000 micro grant, and so it meant that only companies that qualify as micro-sized companies could get the 10,000 grant. But you have to start somewhere, and so I'm not knocking it. But I came out of the private sector where I'm pro-growth, pro-entrepreneurship. And today, you can get up to $30,000 in cash and $30,000 in technical assistance. And we've reduced the paperwork from down to about 5 pages to about 3 pages. Very simple requirements to get the program, to make it easier for grantees to get the grants. And so again, we didn't start it, but I would like to think that we perfected it. And but certainly we're going to keep pushing to make it to be more innovative, to make it easier for grantees to get the grant. But we're not just trying to put cash in person's hands. We want to create sustainable businesses. As I said to them, what we don't want is that we don't want grantees showing up every year needing a grant to be just to be able to exist. We want businesses we want businesses to thrive, not just to survive. But also what we want is that we want to get businesses to a point where they're having best practices. And so the ideal thing for me is that you work with Invest TCI for 3 years, even if you only get one grant during that time, but that we work with you to get particularly your financial statements and financial best practices on point. And so by the time after 3 years, when you're able to, if you want to go to the bank and the bank says, give me your 3 years worth of financial statements, you're not scrambling around trying to produce them on the fly, that you would have those 3 years and you would have learned best practices. Because one thing I've learned is that businesses at that level, it's usually the expert that's running the business, and that's necessary. That doesn't necessarily mean those two skills go together. But I mean the expert is, let's just say you're making crafts, and that's your skill set, and you're very good at it. It doesn't mean that expertise is the same expertise that you can in terms of running the business properly. And it's because running it operations wise, you're going to have your marketing, you've got sales, and all those other things that if you're a technical person, those skills you may not have, and particularly around financial management and tracking your finances. And so it's hard for a lot of businesses to persons to come in there, create businesses mainly around their technical skills, but don't have all of the skills and experiences to run all the different aspects of running a company. And so we want to give them those things over the 3 years. So by the time they quote unquote graduate from the MSME program, they would have everything in place to be able to be successful and go from strength to strength.
Yeah. And that is definitely, I think, for all Caribbean economies, especially the small island territories, that we are looking at how we invest more in our small business sector to be able, again, to grow our economies in a very sustainable way, as well as, bring economic empowerment to our people. Are you there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, what are some of the things from an investment standpoint? I think there is the Invest TCI under your ministry?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I encountered them, I believe it was in a forum I went to in the Bahamas last year in October. And, they presented about the different investment opportunities that exist. So I was, curious to find out more from you in terms of what the government's strategy towards attracting foreign investment as well as stimulating domestic investors.
Well, I'm happy you said that, to ask that question. The most important thing to me, to be frank, is that I want to create domestic investors. Because as I said, it's something completely different. I just came back from FinTech, Fix 24 in Barbados, and I said it there also, is that what we certainly don't want in the Caribbean is foreign investment managing and investing and controlling the entire ecosystem, and that would actually certainly be bad for us. And the fact that we want Caribbean people, in this case Turks and Caicos Islanders, to be entrepreneurs, and as much as possible, I would like for them to not just be able to play in the ecosystem. And second, I want us to own the entire ecosystem, from not just having to be employees in it, but also financiers and designers of the ecosystem, whatever it is. So if it's a hotel project, I want us to be the financiers of the project, build the project, be the designers of it, be the people running it, be the employees and the employers of it. But the things that we are focusing on right now is the traditional businesses that drives the TCI economy, which is around tourism. For us, we're becoming very quickly a villa market. We were a condo hotel market now, but what we're finding is that a lot of people want to come in and build very high-end villas and charge tens of thousands of dollars a night. I can understand it because in the market right now, if you build $100 million hotel, it's you probably won't be. You're probably middle of the market now. But with the same 100 million, if you build four $25 million villas, you can do very well, and you'll be at the top of the market. So that seemed to be more attractive to persons. Our job is to facilitate whatever they want to go into, whether they want to go into the condo market or whether they want to go into the villa market. Our job as a government is to make that process as easy as possible. We know that the investors aren't coming because of our great investment policies. They're coming because of our natural beauty, the Turks and Caicos Islands. And so our job is to make sure that that is sustainable and that we're not doing the things. We're not killing the goose that laid the golden egg. We're not doing things that kills our natural beauty. So we have to invest in preserving that. We have to ensure that we're able to preserve it as much as possible. So we have to make a lot of effort to ensure that the products that are that are encouraging the consumers that come to our country, the tourists, and those who are investing in our countries, that it's there for a very long time. But the thing that the investment is doing, I'm certain it's happening all around the world, is that as we grow, it's put a strain on the workers. We need workers. Our indigenous population is very small, and so we're constantly having to bring in transient workers. That's added a new dimension to our market. When I say new, I don't mean like 5 years, probably more like 40 years. But the fact is that it puts a huge demand on housing and housing needs, because we have immigration with an I and we have immigration with an E. So we've got a lot of persons from inside the Turks and Caicos moving from out of the islands to the main city center, which is Providenciales. And then we have a lot of persons from the outside of the Turks and Caicos coming into Providenciales. And so it's put a huge demand on housing at exactly the time when short-term rentals are pulling out a lot of inventory out of the market. And so it's put a demand on affordable homes. And that's going to have to be the next most important thing. I mean, outside of getting the new airport built and some other things, that our government, and I think future governments, at least for the next 20 years, one of their high priorities will need to be ensuring that we have enough affordable homes every year being built to match the requirements of it. So that would be our focus. Again, the hotel high-end brands, because we want to have the top brands, because our market right now is a premium market, tourist destination. And so a lot of the high-end brands, we want them to keep coming here. We're high-end villa market. We have to put in the infrastructure to make sure that our infrastructure is 5-star and our service is 5-star to match the 5-star brand, but also to ensure that we have affordable housing for the people of the Turks and Caicos and the workers who we have coming in.
So as it relates to the affordable housing that you refer to, is there a government program in terms of you will be building projects, or is it something you're going to try to stimulate the private sector to do?
We have a number. I hope you can still hear me. I think there was a little bit of a delay. We have a number of projects going on. I don't like to speak to other ministers' departments and ministries, because there's good news, they want to break it. But the Ministry of Physical Planning and Infrastructure Development, the housing program falls under them. We're going to be looking at a number of different solutions to that problem. Certainly one of them, and the one that I'm keen on, is ensuring that government can start to build affordable houses, whether it's directly by government or in some type of partnership with the private sector. We have home renovations programs. We have incentives for private sectors to developers to get into the affordable housing market. We're looking at mortgage schemes with the banks, incentivizing the banks to be more aggressive in terms of their lending. We're looking at mortgage guarantees. And so we don't think that there's one silver bullet that we can fire to make the housing thing go away. So we're looking at a number of different areas, hoping that we can chip away at the problem and get to that point. But based on a study that was done, it wasn't done by my ministry, so my numbers may be slightly off. But I think we need, I was told, and what I heard is that the country needs a net 400 to 600 affordable homes every year for the next
Wow.
15 years. And one number said 600 for the next decade, and every year for the next decade. And another number said 400 for the next 2 decades. But we know that we need hundreds of homes, now affordable homes in the market. And so we have to try everything. We have to try to get persons to make it easier for them to buy distressed properties from the banks, to be able to renovate it. We need to be able to get people building more. We have to look away from not just building horizontally, meaning that everyone with their yard, having a yard, to building vertically, where people are building in high rises and owning a unit in high rises. Everything is on the table right now to be able to maintain that type of growth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my co-host is behind the scene. He's just shared on the screen. This again is an article from August 2023 about the launching of the National Housing Policy. So I guess we'll have the minutes for physical planning and infrastructure on. So this will be great to hear more about this, because again, as small island territories, all of us are challenged with land available to do what we need to do for our population. So that is something that we definitely will have to see what we can learn from each other, because I find that having these conversations on the show helps me to understand, one, that we're not here facing the same unique problems in the Virgin Islands, or even when we speak to counterparts in Bermuda or Cayman or Montserrat, we're all being challenged by similar social challenges, to make sure that we're having a good quality of life for our citizens. So Chris is here joining us. Chris, thank you for popping in.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, Shaina, and good evening, Honorable Deputy Premier. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. And I'm happy to thank your co-host for having me on the show. I have one disappointment, that when I was told about it, I was told that a number of my colleagues have already been on. And so I don't know if you're saving.
For last.
I just don't see how I fell through the cracks.
No, we're working our way up the ladder,
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Our good evening to the people of the Caribbean. We've had Honorable Kyle Mills, Honorable Robinson, and now yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes, we did send an invite for others, but they have, little by little. Now when you have your cabinet meeting, you must say Territories Talk is part of our monthly agenda.
Well, what I will tell my colleagues is that all of my colleagues, and not just with our party, that if you want to have a Caribbean brand as a politician, you need to be on Territories Talk.
Yeah, I mean, and I must say thank you to Radio Turks and Caicos, because they have been our partner for about 2 years now, Shaina?
Yeah, just over 2.
Yes, so Chris Jarrett and Damian Wilson, we forged a partnership, so the show is aired in on Turks and Caicos Radio every week, and so we're just building ourselves together. One of the things that I would like to add to the show is put a little context to things, right? Because if someone from Bermuda was listening to Honorable Saunders, they'd be saying that guy sounds a lot like a Bermudian. Like, which part of Bermuda he's from? I haven't seen him before. Just for those who don't know, Honorable, tell us about the different islands, because we heard Turks and Caicos Island, but just tell us the different islands.
Okay, well, I like to say that the Turks and Caicos is because a lot of people know about the Bahamas. It's like a smaller Bahamas.
Okay.
And literally, the Bahamas is almost 10 times the size, but it's the exact same culture. It's actually at the southern end of the Bahamas, or the Bahamas that run the northern end of the TCI. The Turks and Caicos Islands runs from west to east. And so when I say west to east, that if you follow the Bahama chain all the way down from Florida, you'll find the Turks and Caicos at the bottom of it. They run north to south. We run more west to east. So with the map you're looking at right now, you would see West Caicos in the west and Grand Turk and Salt Key to the east. One little bit of trivia: if you go due east from Grand Turk, you wouldn't hit anything until you get to Africa, the coast of Africa. You'd just be flying over open water east of Grand Turk. And if you do it in a straight line, you'll get to, I think, Murritan. And so, but the Grand Turk is the capital. It's one of the small islands. I grew up, even though I wasn't born there, I grew up on the island of South Caicos. So if you go west of Grand Turk, you'll see South Caicos. East Caicos, which is just above South Caicos, so I'm going now from east to west, is completely uninhabited. And the largest island, which is Middle Caicos, and then the middle has the smallest population out of the inhabited islands. And then you've got North Caicos up to the top. So between North, Middle, East, and South Caicos, you may have the largest landmass. Well, more North, Middle, and East Caicos, but those islands have the smallest population. And then Providenciales, when I was a kid, had one of the smaller populations. And so imagine in 1980, Provo probably had maybe 2,000-3,000 people. Today has the bulk of the population, and they have the bulk of the tourism. And so Providenciales is like the city now. That's the one you see to the left, just below Providenciales is West Caicos. There's nothing on West Caicos. So Providenciales is where everything happens. And that's why when you heard me earlier, I talked about immigration with an I and immigration with an E, meaning that Providenciales have sucked the population from all of the other islands. So most people work on Providenciales, as well as the international population that also have moved to Provo. So that's the largest island. We're in the middle of a census right now, and I think by the time the census is done, we'll find that Provo is north of maybe 40,000. Then Grand Turk will be the next most populous, the capital, which will be around about 5,000. And then South Caicos, my island, will be about 1,000. I think the same thing will be around north. And Middle Caicos will probably be about 300-400. And so, but it's the exact same culture that that you see in the Bahamas. Great food, great. They tell me it's the world's best beaches. I'd have to go with that. And who am I to argue all of the tourists that comes here? But it's great weather, great people, great culture, great food. And if you look at the tourist numbers, a great brand.
So just a little bit more context. If you look, can you tell us a little bit about this house, Honorable?
Well, I think that's a house. If I orient properly, that's a house on Salt Key. My Bermudan friends will probably be eager to hear this. Is that there was a point in time when a lot of the persons from Bermuda would come here, because during the development, I should say the exploration of the Caribbean, there was people with a lot of pirates and the colonial masters in the region. They were doing it during the season. I think the seasons were around the hurricane seasons. And so what happened is that some of the small islands, like the Turks and Caicos, was seasonally inhabited. It didn't have a permanent population, but there were a lot of pirates in the region. And so the people from Bermuda started coming down, basically patrolling the waters outside of the season for shipwrecks. And then they started raking salt, so mining salt. That's a salt pan that you see in front of the house. So a lot of the first population, permanent population, started with people coming from Bermuda, coming from during the seasons. I think again during the hurricane seasons when a lot of ships weren't sailing, and they made up the bulk of the temporary population that moved into the permanent population. And so our influence is Bermudan. Our names are popular names in Bermuda also. My last name is Saunders. I think you'd see a lot of Saunders in Bermuda, but we have a lot of other names that are popular Bermudan names. And based on that, also our architecture, as our old architecture has basically adopted the Bermudan style. So that's a Bermudan style design. And so you would hear a lot of us when we are talking about the old cities, particularly the capital in Grand Turk, you would see the old Bermudan style homes. So that's a house. I think that's the White House in Salt Key. built by one of the original families that settled Salt Key, and the house is right next to what Salt Key is famous for, a salt pan, where many years ago they mined and sold salt globally. So that's, I'm certainly, my friends, Honorable Wayne Keynes in Bermuda keeps reminding me that Turks and Caicos was partially inhabited by Bermudians. He says a little bit more aggressively than that, but I don't want any wars breaking out in our region.
Yes, and we also share some other history. You know this lady?
Yes, I've heard of Mary Prince, and she made up a big part of our history around slavery. She wasn't born in the Turks and Caicos, but she was moved to the Turks and Caicos from another island. I think it might have been Montserrat or something like that.
No.
And she the salt pans, and then she eventually ended up in the UK, I think in England, I believe, because she wrote the book on the history of Mary Prince. And a lot of it, I think, was talked about her time in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
So, Mary, just for can I point of order you, Deputy?
Can you what?
May I point of order you?
Yes, go ahead.
So, point of order, or point of clarification, I should say. Mary Prince was born in Bermuda. She was born about maybe 5 minutes drive away from where I'm sitting right now, and she was sold to a slave master, Ingham, and then sold to a slave master, Robert Darrell, who had property in Turks and Caicos Island. So the history of Turks and Caicos Island, long and short, is that it was founded by Bermudian slave owners. That they weren't just pirates, they were slave owners that took the slaves from Bermuda to populate Turks and Caicos Island. And one of their slaves was Mary Prince.
I'm just correcting. I wasn't saying that the Bermudans were pirates. I was saying during those days when there were lots.
No. I know. I'm just being. You have to be very diplomatic. I do.
Yeah, no. So I wasn't. I just know that we had a lot of pirates in the region. And for a lot
I say that to say that most Bermudians are only just now becoming aware of the strong connection biological connections between Bermuda and the Turks and Caicos Island, but we are your cousins. But that's a whole nother show that we can discuss with your Minister of Culture and so on.
Yeah.
I just want to endorse that. I mean, my parents, a number of years ago, we were having our anniversary birthday party for my parents, and we went to a restaurant. So it was all Saunders people in the room. And we came out of the restaurant, and there were some tourists waiting for a taxi. And those tourists were on their honeymoon from Bermuda, and there was Saunders from Bermuda. So we know that particularly in my case, but I think there's a number of other names, that families that travel between Bermuda to Turks and Caicos, and Bermuda, the Bahamas, and the Turks and Caicos, and somehow they made their way to Massachusetts because my father's uncle, he ended up dying in Bermuda. And when with 23andMe now, with all of the contractual DNA, we have a lot of family members of ours who are in Bermuda and who are also in Massachusetts. And I believe that they made the jump from Bermuda to Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let me make another little quick jump because time is not with us. This is these folks here?
I certainly know one of them very, very well, and the one that looks most like me. He would say he looks better than me. But if there's a gentleman there with his arms around the guy with the light collar jacket, and the other one with more of the afro, big smile on his face with a vest. That's my father. So if you're looking at the photograph, he'd be from the second right. So we have the Honorable, so I'm going to go from the right across. You have the Honorable Robert Hall to the end on the right-hand side. Then you have the Honorable Norman Saunders, that's my father. You have the Honorable Nathaniel Francis, deceased. You have the Honorable Stafford Mizig, deceased also, so that's the front row. And then the back between my father and Honorable Nathaniel Francis I believe, if my eyesight is going well, I think that's the Honorable Arthur Butterfield, who's there, and I'm certain you would know that the Butterfield name is also a big name in Bermuda also.
Yeah.
Butterfield Bank.
Yeah. So this is about your affordable homes. This is some of the work that you all are doing. I think that's Honorable Morris, I want to say.
Yes, that's Honorable Morris. I think a number of them are in that photograph. I can see by the list it's saying the Premier Honorable Morris and a few others are there. I think the governor is there also. Yeah, she's in the photograph. And Honorable Musgrove, because it would have fallen on his ministry. And it's also Honorable Malcolm.
Your cousin.
Yeah. What I find though is that it's usually my ministry that has to pay for these things, but
That is true. Can't happen without financing.
Oh, one of the reasons you could pay for it is because of this. You all have record-breaking tourism every year. You're the hotspot of the Caribbean now.
Yeah, we have the brand. We certainly have the brand. What we need to do is that we need to ensure that our experience matches the brand. We're not there yet, but we're ambitious. We're an ambitious government. We want to get there. We're going to spend to get the experience of the country to match it. It's not something that we can do overnight, but I want to see someone ask me to find 5-star experience, because I was talking about it, and I truly believe that from the time the airplane lands, that the experience from that taxiing into the airport, again, the experience from the plane taxiing in to the plane taking off, that all of those touch points should be 5-star. It should be easy to be able to taxi in, easy for the tourists to get off, the visitors to get off of the airplane into the airport to get checked through. It's about getting through immigration at just the time when your bags are showing up, so you shouldn't have to be waiting in line anywhere. Getting through customs, by the time you get to the curbside, your transportation is pulling up at exactly the same time. So none of those areas that you're waiting on, your drive to to where you're staying should be scenic and beautiful. And then when you get to your accommodations, the experience that you have there, even though it's not government managing the experience, it should be 5-star. And when you enjoy the Turks and Caicos, it should be all 5-star and all the way back until you get back onto the plane and take off onto your boat and start to sail out of the Turks and Caicos. So that's my dream, and to get all of those experiences to be 5-star and to be memorable in a positive way.
So these are some of the accommodations that. Which one is this, Honorable?
The way that looks to me is that I believe that's the Grace Bay resorts, the smaller resorts with the brown roofs to the north of the photo. So that should be the Tuscany, and I think the Venetian and the tall buildings. They're sister properties. They're side by side, and I believe that's the like I said, to the top of the Grace Bay resorts.
And this is some of the villas, example of some of the villas that are being rented.
Yes.
Okay. And it's interesting if you look at
the market.
If you look at the roof, that's a Bermuda style roof.
Yeah. Sure is.
We would like to think that we've improved on the design over the years.
Quite possibly. But what I when I was listening earlier, what I loved hearing was that you're not just a government collecting money, you're reinvesting in your people, right? And this is this is why people stay loyal to a certain party, because they see themselves developing along and not just the rich getting richer, you know?
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for all the members of the party, and I don't want to speak for the premier, but I want to say that I don't think we started from I totally get it. I don't think we started from that point. I think it's a byproduct of trying to do the right thing, why people support our party, and why we believe strongly that we will win the next election. But it didn't start from that point. We started from the point of we felt that. We genuinely felt that the civil service, we genuinely felt that the civil service wasn't well paid. and we wanted to make sure that we get them something that was well above um, the minimum. Keeping their heads well above water. And for me, it was important that they could save. You don't want your civil service having to be stressed living from month to month. But I also believe that government has to become the employer of choice. And so when you become the employer of choice, more quality persons are going to come into the civil service. And so we'll increase the customer service coming out of the civil service. Because you want, when persons graduate, when they look and say, where am I going to work? You want them to think, I want to work with government. Because in government is the employer of choice. And so we made a deliberate effort to become an employer of choice. And I believe that the private sector will catch up and probably surpass government at some point. But the idea is that we want to be able to be competing for the best and brightest persons coming into the private sector. And this is a start and investing in the people. But I believe in a few years you will see that, and I want to hear people saying that when they name the best civil service in the world, I want Turks and Caicos to be among those names when they're talking about the best civil service, most best managed, best paid, best place for upward mobility. People like working on exciting things, so we're giving them exciting jobs to work on, and that they're going to work in the morning refreshed and leaving in the evening even more energized because they enjoy what they do.
So let me ask you this. We're politically minded here. What is the guiding philosophy of the PNP?
Can you say that again? What? Sorry.
What is the guiding philosophy of the PNP, your party?
In terms of we're a progressive party by heart, and I think if I have to narrow it down to one phrase, it would be empowering Turks and Caicos Islanders. I campaign on the phrase "living your best life." I think in different forms, that's probably it. Sometimes you would hear people saying Turks and Caicos first, meaning that Turks and Caicos first in the Turks and Caicos Islands. But I think it all comes back to that. I believe that in my deepest part of my fiber that government's jobs are to make today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. The Turks and Caicos Islands is for Turks and Caicos Islanders, so we should be living our best lives in the Turks and Caicos. So I think our guiding philosophy, our North Star is how do we make Turks and Caicos a place where Turks and Caicos Islanders can live their best lives. That you don't have to go abroad to find something better. That you're not in the middle of the line, you're not in the back of the line. And I think from the beginning, from all of it, and I think from the beginning of time, our party was founded, I think if you narrow it down, it comes back to that. And I believe that it's going to be carried forward into the future. And we may come up with different slogans, but I think when you narrow it down to its essence, you'd see that our party, the main goal is always to ensure that Turks and Caicos Islanders get to live their best lives.
And I forgive me if this was asked already. Where's your particular constituency?
In my constituency, we have something that's similar to BVI, where we have constituencies and we have all island candidates, which means
at large,
the whole country. And and so I'm an all island candidate. So the whole island, the whole country is my constituency, legally and figuratively. And so everyone gets a chance to cast a vote on me. And so when the election is called, they're going to get to rate my performance, and everyone will get a chance to rate my performance. Hopefully, I'll come out well more than 50%, but I'm an all-island candidate.
Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah.
Over to you, Shaina.
Well, I'm ready to move and be employed by the government. Again, there's the similarities that I'm hearing come out tonight. We just recently did our public service salary compensation review last year, and it started to roll out at the beginning, I believe, with this budget this year. So, it's a similar something. Having been a former public officer, it is something where, again, to retain the best talent, it is important for government to to basically pay to retain the talent. So I'm happy to hear that that is something that is a high priority for the government, because for all of us again in our OTs, we don't want to have a successful life elsewhere. We need to be able to have it at home, wherever we are calling home. So that's very encouraging to hear that, Chris.
Mhm.
The other area too, I'm just going to touch on quickly, is that I've always wondered why government offices have to look like government offices. You go into government offices, the paint seems to be peeling off the wall. There's cables hanging from the wall. There's dark marks. There's the desks seem to appear to be old, and not just in Turks and Caicos, right across. When I go in, and so I want the next thing that I would possibly start to focus on, once we make sure that our civil service is happy, is ensuring that their working environments is conducive to their long-term health and to the efficiency and high productivity. And so I would like to ensure that our government is able to fund those things. Like I said again, to make sure that, because sometimes you don't want to go into an environment. The environment is stressful, even if it's not coming from your coworkers. It's just that the things that the environment you have to work in physically. And a lot of times you find that these buildings have long-term issues that lead to your long-term, affect your health long-term. And so we want to make sure that our government offices and our government equipment are modern, they're working in working order, and that they're conducive, as I said, to the long-term health of our civil service, but also it increases productivity versus taking away from it.
One thing that also came to mind when you spoke about the salary increases, Minister, was about asking you, how have you managed the cost of living inflation over the last few years? Because it was impressive to see the government had, again, one of the articles I saw was about the amount of almost a year, I think it's cash reserves, and how, were you able to be able to do that and in the midst of, high inflation globally as it relates to your country?
Well, a few things. I'm happy that we have our cash reserves almost a year. Let me explain that. I know that the reporter, even including the article, the reporter said that I had made a comment. She wasn't sure why I made it. Now, the comment that I made was during the budget time, and at that time we had we probably was around 8 to 9 months worth of cash reserves. And the point I wanted to make at that point was that coming out of COVID, we were going to spend huge ambitions around our capital program. And if anyone had any questions around how can you have this ambitious capital program when we just came out of a pandemic, I wanted to tell them that we can afford it, because the amount of cash reserves we have, that the government could still pay salaries and operate and run, even if it didn't take in $1 of revenue for a number of months. So that was the point. The idea was that the government can pay its bills for almost a year now. Now, some of that is restricted cash, because we have cash like the National Wealth Fund, and we have cash for pensions and everything. That we even though we could change the rules to access it, not all of it is unrestricted cash. Now, how do we deal with the cost of living? I mean, most times when you're trying to fight cost of living, you're fighting it from behind. You're not normally taking proactive measures, because you don't know what the world can happen. Like all of a sudden we could wake up with the United States having a soft recession, a war someplace could cause the cost of living to go up, and then you're playing catch up. And so it has a little bit of a reactive feel to it, but we try to put some science behind it and look at the parts that are getting out of control and do things to keep them down. So as an example, the cost of utilities, electric utility, is higher in the Turks and Caicos than it is in probably most places. Now, before I get beaten up by the electrical company, I would say that the reliability is also higher. We have very good reliability. And so we have premium reliability, but you're paying a bit of a premium price for it. And there are times when the fuel factor, some places don't have fuel factor, but we have a fuel factor. So we have two rates. We have your base rate,
Mm-hmm.
That's been calculated a number of years ago that you pay per kilowatt hour. But the fuel factor captures the movement and increase in the global price of fuel. And so that can go up or down. And there's sometimes when it can get as high as the normal bill itself, and sometimes it can go higher. And when it starts to match the bill itself and get to go higher, the population sees it and they feel it. And so what we did is that we paid the utility company for every increase in the fuel factor above a certain amount. Okay. So we said this is the ceiling, and everything that's above that, the government will pay them to subsidize it right across, right for everyone. So right across the country. We also look at breadbasket items where we remove the import duties or drastically reduce the import duties. We also have an administration fee. So we got a CPF. That we reduce the CPF on a number of items. And so these are the sorts of things that we do. We look at where the pain points, and we try to reduce those pain points. If need be, we would have a stimulus so we give people cash directly into their pocket. But we also work with the food importers to make sure that, again, the breadbasket items, that they don't get to a point where people can't afford them. And things that necessities, like things like your electricity, we try to put an effort to making sure that they don't come to a point where you can't afford them. Now, the population feels a different way, because if your cost of living is X and it's increasing 25%, and we keep it down to 5% increase, the only thing they see is the 5% increase. They don't see that it could have been 25%. Mm-hmm. And so they go, oh my goodness, I'm paying more than what I was paying before. And while that is true, I would say that we've done a pretty good job making sure that it wasn't as worse as it could be, but we don't have negative, our governance into the point where we have negative cost of living, where you're saving more and more money every year. The challenges in the world, it's nothing we can do about that. But we pull all the levers that we can to ensure that any type of negative impact from particularly shocks, global shocks, that we minimize those negative impacts.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead first.
Yeah, as we're starting to wind on from a regional, and we'll have you back. We would like to have you back as a continuum. From a regional, how do you feel Turks and Caicos Island can play a partnership? Let's start with the other OTs too, for example.
I think for a number of years, and I may be wrong, and you can correct me on this if I am, that the Turks and Caicos is always considered among the overseas territories and even regionally as a small player, maybe like your little brother. And so a lot of times things come like legislations and everything, we would follow with Bermuda and Cayman, and those were doing BVI, and we'd almost copy and paste. I think we were afraid to take the lead on certain things, particularly the financial services and stuff. I think more regionally, with CARICOM, we're not a full member of CARICOM, we're an associated member. And so we've always taken an observer role. And so I think if you define Turks and Caicos from its inception to now, we've probably been more of an observer. And any best practices would have been adopted and slightly modified for our jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. I think the new Turks and Caicos, I'm confident, is going to become more of a player. I truly believe that Caribbean people, but Turks and Caicos Islands in the specific case, are world class. I think we deserve to be at the table and deserve to be able to speak to issues. I want Turks and Caicos to not only copy and paste certain things, but I want us to be able to lead on certain things and then be part of the conversation. You and I, Thomas, was in the CARICOM 50th anniversary. I'm certain you heard that you would have known that I think I got put out of one of the rooms diplomatically because I spoke up. And
I applaud you for that. You stood up for us,
And I spoke up because we're not full members, but my view, just for people across the region, was that Turks and Caicos is the closest neighbor to Haiti outside of the Dominican Republic, where they share a landmass, that no conversations globally should take place about the fate of Haiti unless Turks and Caicos is involved in the conversation. Because if nothing is done, we feel the brunt. And if something is done, we feel the brunt. And so everything, so we have to feel the brunt. So I think it's, I think that it's wrong, but also foolhardy to feel that you have enough knowledge to be able to sit down and talk about Haiti and how we manage it and how we deal with the issues without saying, what does Turks and Caicos have to say about it? Because we're the closest to it. We can tell you more about it outside of maybe the Haitians themselves and the Dominicans. But yet you have conversations around the world that's not including Turks and Caicos. And so when I was with CARICOM and we were in the room and we were a little bit away from the table, I decided I wanted to put my hand up and say that. That's going to be the new Turks and Caicos. I think the new Turks and Caicos is going to say, we're going to be players. We're going to be players in the market. We're going to be players regionally. We're world class. We're getting world class education. Many of us are going abroad. And so we're sitting down in world class universities with others. And then when we come back, we see our peers taking world class leadership roles, whether it's in private sector, whether it's in government sector. And the only thing they have over us is the fact is that they happen to come from a bigger country. And so my view is that if I went to university in Canada and my peers are leading government in Canada or leading corporate Canada, and some of them are leading corporate America, but I'm doing equal to them academically. When we get together, I should be able to have a seat at the table because I show that I can compete. And so that's going to be the new Turks and Caicos Islands. I think that you will find that we're going to be pulling up a chair to the table and not just accepting or not just listening in on the conversation, taking notes, that we're going to be contributing to the conversation of the for Turks and Caicos, and we're going to contribute to the conversation for the region. And as long as I'm around, we're going to contribute to the conversation around what's happening in Haiti because it affects us also.
Yeah, and I like that attitude because the thing is that from a colonial thing, we've been inundated with classism, right? And classism could be based on color, it could be based off of economics. And within the Caribbean region, classism is based off of the size of the island, right? And us as the quote unquote smaller islands often get left aside on decisions that the bigger islands are made, and we have to I don't want to say suffer the consequences, but we deal with the byproducts versus us saying no, that's not a right decision. Or what about you think about this? So what I love about Turks and Caicos, the current partnership between Turks and Caicos, BVI, Bermuda, especially, is that when we go to these CARICOM meetings, we're not here to play in the sandbox. We're here to be partners.
Part of the conversation, yeah.
And let's be frank too. It's not like we're showing up and we're not paid up. We're showing up and we're fully paid up. So it's if we're going to be sending an invoice for membership and our invoices are fully paid up, we shouldn't be taking observer status. That's my personality. And I think that's the new Turks and Caicos. I would like to think it's the new overseas territories because we are having more forward thinking. Well, as the younger people move up and become more worldly, I think our views are going to change. I don't want to suggest anything, but my view, and I've seen it with my peers also, is that we didn't come to be observers. We're coming to be a part of the conversation because we are very smart people and we have something to say also. And it will be remiss of us if we don't go in there and represent our people. We don't want people shaping policies for us when they're not familiar with BVI or familiar with Bermuda or familiar with Turks and Caicos. And it would be remiss of us to go there and sit there and come out and go, oh boy, I don't think that's going to work for us. But we didn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
So I might be the first person who they at CARICOM first regional leader that basically diplomatically said, after lunch, don't come into the room.
Yeah. Before we depart, I have a message for you from someone. Said then they saw the advert. They said, "Oh, that's my mate. We went to TCS together." I'm like, "TCS? What's TCS?" It's from TCI. He said, "No, this was a school in Canada. Balcario Thomas."
Balcario Thomas, yes.
Yes. So he's one of our leaders in Bermuda when it comes. He's in the real estate market. And he said to make sure to give you his fondest remarks.
Well, just for people, Caribbean people, a lot of Caribbean people went to school, go to school in Canada. And I had the benefit of going to Trinity College School, TCS. And so I went to a lot of persons, right, with a lot of persons right across the region. They were there. And benefit that Balcario Thomas was in the same house that I was in. It was Burns' house. He was a few years behind me, but I remember Balcario very well. And you can give him my regards. But it's but that gets back to the point that I was making, is that some of us and more of us are getting the opportunity to get education at the same level that North American Europeans are getting. And when you're sitting there in the room and you see that you can compete, and then you come back home and people go, well, you're just from the Turks and Caicos, your revenues are less than 500 million, your population is less than 50,000. We don't want to hear what you have to say. That cuts deeply, because you're starting to say, wait a minute, I know I can compete with these people. And I'll give you a very quick story. I used to work with KPMG Consulting. And a lot of times when I was more on the IT side of things. So the view I had at that time is that people saw me as an IT mechanic, in the sense that my laptop's not working, can you fix it? My email's not working, can you fix it? But the deals, when they're working with the investors, it was happening somewhere else. I wasn't in the room. You'd go out to dinner in the evening. And I wouldn't be there. I would be the person saying, hey, we're going to go out to dinner for an hour or two, but can you check my emails for me? Or can you work on the presentation? So when I started getting into the room, and this huge global conglomerate where we were in the room, we were in LA together, sitting down, we were doing some work around encryption and working for a film studio over there. And there's a big, huge company. Some of their directors were in the room. And what I heard the directors saying, I was saying to myself, these guys are running companies that are worth billions of dollars. They are the directors, but I have more knowledge on certain areas than they do. But why am I not in that room? Why are they're talking about different things that I certainly have more experience in? So, that was one of the examples where I realized, and they were running a company that was worth billions of dollars. I don't want to call the name, one of the top global companies, certainly in the top 100 companies in the world, still today. And yet I felt that I could compete. And so, and I tell people this all the time. I wasn't even the top student in my class in South Caicos, where we've never had 100 students in the entire high school. And if I feel that I can go, then I can compete with directors who are running global conglomerates. And I wasn't even the top student in my class. It tells you that across the Caribbean, we have certainly world-class people. And the only thing we lack the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I know that you are going to be a return guest on this show, because you're speaking to something that is the basis of this show, is that we don't see ourselves as less than. We cannot see ourselves as less than. Mm-hmm. And the more we work together is the better I know this sounds cliche. The more we work together, the stronger we as overseas territories and as a region will be. And I appreciate your frankness and candidness in this.
Well, that's the only way I can be, and that's how I am. That's the only way I can be. But like I said, I truly believe in Caribbean people. I came out of tech. I'm still a bit of tech computer programmer at heart. I know how hard it is for us, but I tell people all the time, if we had the capital, if we had access to the cheap capital that they have in North America and Europe, we would be doing amazing things. But we're getting there. We're getting there, and I can see that every year we're going from strength to strength. We're not where we should be, but I'm confident when you look at the next generation, look at our generation, you look at the next generation, we're starting to figure it out. We're starting to put our hand up. And I'm going to go back to the CARICOM thing. Yes, they're going to say,
give me a few minutes. I'm on a meeting, right?
The first person is going to say,
good.
He's speaking out of turn. But when we start to speak, when enough of us start speaking out of turn, we're going to get invited to the table. We'll look back 50 years from now, we'll realize that our islands are at the table regionally, but as our superstar, in the region, everyone knows that Prime Minister Motley is doing great things. She's starting to ensure that she represents the Caribbean at the seat globally. I don't think it's going to start and stop with her. I think that's just the beginning. And someone, there was a saying, they said, this is not this is the start, but this is the beginning of this is not the end. This is just the end of the beginning. And so, meaning that she's the first person who's going to get there, and there may be a little bit of a lull, but I think what happens is that you're going to see more and more Prime Minister Motleys from the Caribbean stepping up and saying, I can do this. I'm prepared to do it. I've got the education, I've got the qualifications, I've got the confidence, I've got the mentors, because when she goes there and comes on, she'll become a mentor, and we're going to go from strength to strength. So I'm very excited about the Caribbean now and into the future. And I must give kudos to those who came before us for all of their hard work, because when I hear about Caribbean history, particularly around with the politicians there, I'm blown away by what they went through and what they had to go through to get the Caribbean where it is even to today.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I think this was a very refreshing conversation tonight. I am, inspired by the bold leadership, because, everything you've spoken about tonight, Mr. Deputy Premier, is something that we always trying to, reiterate to our audiences, that, because we come out of the Caribbean and our history doesn't make us any less than, especially in this 24th century. So we always should, have the boldness to dream big. And that's what I'm hearing you, describe for us tonight. So I am really looking forward, because as you said, PM Motley is the stone that drop, and the ripples are feeding out throughout the region, and it's only a matter of time.
Yes. Thank you, Deputy Premier, for being on, and we look forward to having yourself return and more of your cabinet and caucus colleagues join us on Territories Talk, because this isn't our show, this is your show.
Thank you.
And please give regards to my personal friend, Honorable Akira Missick, AK, and Honorable Josephine Connolly.
Thank you. I will. I'll certainly do that.
All right.
Take us out, Chris. Thank our media partners, and that's all right.
Yes, I want to thank our media partners: Bermuda Channel 82, Radio Saba, Barbados CBC, Cayman Marl, Radio Turks and Caicos, Radio CBN in the Virgin Islands, both the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands. I hate saying that word. ZJB Radio in Montserrat, and everybody on the internet. And just thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time, let's continue to inform and unite our overseas territory and Caribbean family. Have a good evening.
All right.